Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis, in this series on the network of global corporate control. Today's segment is about our hearts and is pre-recorded. Thanks to DCTV, Carmen Stanley, director, Cruchet Starnes, audio and prompter, and Aliyah Jamari, floor director. A couple of months ago, we spoke about how we're all connected through our hearts. I'll give you some background. This series has been on air every Tuesday since early May 2015. I'm the lawyer for a trust called the Global Debt Facility that contains the world's monetary gold reserves. General Eisenhower and President Truman agreed to deposit the United States gold in the Global Debt Facility on behalf of the United States. All nations' monetary gold reserves are with the World Bank and International Monetary Fund and their ministers of finance and development. They administer the Global Debt Facility. I vote the United States shares on the Board of Governors of the World Bank and International Monetary Fund so long as the United States Constitution of 1789 is not in effect. The world's bankers and the ones who issue your currency have been trying to run the world. They've been telling you lies. We are going to change this corrupt arrangement in a global currency reset. The chance this comes to pass? Over 90%. We know this from the National War College's power transition model. We are now in transition, and this transition is called the global currency reset, because we are going to exchange the world's currencies for local currencies issued by villages and towns, and for national currencies minted out of the world's monetary gold reserves. First, we're going to replace the currencies issued by the nation's private central banks with currencies issued by the real national governments. At the moment, your governments have been replaced by corporations that belong to a private company which is part of a large, corrupt conglomerate that's called the network of global corporate control. The existence of the network of global corporate control, which is also known as the Banking Cartel, was shown by three mathematicians at Switzerland's Federal Institute of Technology, Vitali Glattfelder and Battiston. Enough people know about this corruption and the difference between reality and the lies in the media controlled by the banking cartel. This explains why the Marines attacked the CIA's branch office in Langley, Virginia on the 18th of November last year. Last week's segment on DCTV answered the question, who is in control, by saying that the banking cartel is no longer in control and that we are all the ones who are in control. YouTube tried to censor the video by interfering with the sound. And one of the people who commented on YouTube said, "Your interview with Chris Ponte, in that interview the audio is excellent and I can hear you very loud and clear. You should use audio settings like his because your audio is poor quality." Thanks. We will look at more comments and questions. The transition, as we assume more and more control from the banking cartel, is going to be very challenging, especially as most of us are still fooled by the banking cartel's lies. Truth is truth and lies are lies. Enough of us know the difference so that we can be sure we are truly in transition. I do not have a crystal ball, and so I'm going to have to rely on what you tell me about your experience. I'll rely on my own experience and on the National War College's power transition model, especially in the beginning, until we learn how to work with each other and build up our communities from the grassroots without corruption. We need to build up our own communication network so that we can share information without interference, because the internet is dominated by the banking cartel. We're going to have to build backup systems. These backup systems are going to have to include word of mouth. We have to work carefully, or we're going to end up no better off than where we are, especially because we have to learn to function without the extremely low-frequency scalar technologies that are being used to try and influence us. Even with its limitations, the internet is a powerful tool to spread information. Here are two popular tweets. The banking cartel has lost control of a core group of humanity, and we are busy liberating the rest. And there's a link in the teleprompter, which if you can get it to work, you'd be able to see the rest of what I've been telling you about the defeat of the banking cartel. Otherwise, we may have to keep on relying on word of mouth. The crux of the matter is that the banking cartel has lost control of a core group of humanity, and we are busy liberating the rest. Because humanity is one, we know that it's only a matter of time. I first tweeted evidence of the corruption in Washington, D.C. nearly 3 years ago. You can see the link in the teleprompter. I retweeted it at the end of April, and it's earned a lot of retweets. And then CMAC on YouTube said, exactly who are the banking cartel, Jekyll Island and the black nobility? And I answered, well, he said, will we have global military tribunals to see justice? And I responded, I've answered the question about the black nobility many times already. My answers are provisional, as we'll delve into matters and learn what's what during the global currency reset. We don't know everything. Indeed, we don't even know what we don't know. The veil of ignorance has been clouding our vision. Military tribunals to get confused with, and where we trip up with the divide and conquer tricks of the black nobility, we're cleaning the corruption in the money system before we get around to global military tribunals. And then there's another tweet that I show you in the teleprompter, which had a very big distribution and impact. It said, people are beginning to catch on that the world's governments are all really one corrupt corporation. The troops in the world's military are aware of the black nobility at the center, and they remain loyal to the people. And I tweeted this to Diplomat News. France's and the United States military are ignoring those fakers, Trump and Macron, who are pretending to head illegitimate U.S. and French governments. They're really corporations, and they're getting replaced. France's military is ignoring that faker, Emmanuel Jean-Michel Frédéric Macron, who's pretending to head an illegitimate French government, which is really a corporation and is getting replaced. And somebody commented, I was shocked to learn Australia is also registered as a corporation. I still can't get my head around it. And now citizens are placed in it. And someone named Being Raymond wrote, the banking cartel was trying to disenfranchise every one of us that way. This corruption is over, and the banking cartel is being wound down. The black nobility at the center is fully exposed. And someone else commented, the U.S. is a corporation too. I wrote, France's military is ignoring that faker, Emmanuel Jean-Michel Frédéric Macron, who's pretending to head an illegitimate French government, which is really a corporation and is getting replaced. And somebody asked me a question. Can you throw some light on global currency reset and the role of India? And then someone else commented, I'm glad to see recognition of and agreement at your suggestion for local villages and towns to create their own currency. Americans would do well to take these suggestions to heart and prepare to invest in our local economies. And someone else commented, hello, Karen, interesting comment. Why do you think Macron regime is illegal? Illegitimate, sorry. And I answered, your government is a corporation. You are paying interest on country debt when the debt doesn't exist. Macron keeps this going. This is just one aspect of its illegitimacy. And someone said, we'll meet again, I'm sure. The next conversation on Twitter was so dangerous for the banking cartel that Twitter hid it behind a button. Many people missed it because they didn't click on the button. That was what the banking cartel expected. This approach backfires because it shows the existence of the banking cartel. And then someone else asked, I suppose Canada is a corporation as well. Where do I go to find out? And then someone else commented, I know Bank of Canada is owned by Rothschild, yet Trudeau refuses to borrow from it. And someone else said, thanks for your tireless work of exposing the banking cartel. The public needs to know the truth. And my response, yes, Canada is a corporation. And then I showed a screenshot of several provinces that were listed with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission. And I said, to find out, you have to search on the SEC's electronic data gathering, analysis, and retrieval system. And the banking cartel censored a reply from someone named Miss K. Oz. Bank of Canada is not owned by Rothschild. The central banks are all owned by the network of global corporate control. That's the banking cartel, and under control of the black nobility. Ultimately, the banking cartel is bankrupt. I tweeted about Twitter's attempt to hide my response in this tweet. Curious about your world? Progress on cleaning up the corruption in our money with the world's wealth in the global debt facility. Twitter hid Edward Correa's comment behind a show more replies button as well. Why do we need show more replies buttons? That's for the banking cartel. This backfires because it shows the existence of the banking cartel. Who said we needed or wanted show more replies buttons? We have a lot of what we don't need or want, and we can't seem to get rid of it. Did the do not call registry work? The world is not as it should be, and it won't continue this way. And someone thanked me for saying that. It's been very time-consuming to reconstruct what Twitter did. There are hackers in my PC, and they've tried every which way to prevent me from word processing. That's the least of my problems. I know when I'm working on something that the banking cartel doesn't want me to work on, and I make sure to back up what I need to. And then in the teleprompter, you can see my notes for the tweet. You need to develop your own systems. One way is to get into a small group of 3 or 4 people, and that's how you manage to do what you intend and not what the banking cartel intends. Putting yourself together with other people also protects you. There's face recognition technology in place, and people who think for themselves, which we're all ultimately going to do, are among the millions of targeted individuals. I'm aware that whatever I can accomplish depends on all of our efforts. It's an enormous privilege and responsibility to do this work. The tweet where Twitter hid that Canada's provinces are listed on the United States Securities and Exchange Commission's EDGAR system, That's a big disclosure, but it hasn't received a wide distribution. This is because the internet is rigged. As we progress further into the global currency reset, we're going to have to rely more on word of mouth. We're not yet finished diagnosing all of the corruption that we're going to have to dismantle. I'd like to include additional information in the teleprompters because it's hard for me to judge how much can be included in the broadcasts on DCTV, and also because the teleprompters usually have better distribution than my other posts. And I'd like to give you a question that a person with $2 trillion worth of Federal Reserve bonds asked me. I'm going to have to find out the answers to many questions in the global currency reset. We're going to work together on figuring out the best consultation process, and there's no better way to learn than by doing. This is an important question because it shows us that the very wealthy are also working with us, and it gives many people an idea about exactly what the Treaty of Versailles bonds are. I also want to include a tweet that mentions how my heart was damaged 2 years ago in Canada. I had a successful cardioversion on the 11th of May, which restored my regular heartbeat. On the 11th of May, the Banking Cartel tried to derail the cardioversion like it did the previous month by using its scalar weaponry to raise my blood pressure to unprecedented high levels. I never had those levels before, and this was in order to prevent the anesthesiologist from going forward. But the anesthesiologist assigned to me on the 11th of May used anesthesia to lower my blood pressure so that the cardioversion could go forward. On the 28th of April, I tweeted two of the people whose comments I answered on the DCTV segment called, "We have the right to put the banking cartel out of the business of starting wars, lying to us, stealing." They responded again. They're up against all of humanity. I tweeted their comments and my response, and that's in the teleprompter. When the banking cartel became desperate, it attacked me and made the global currency reset inevitable. Floor Anderson is trying to divide and conquer humanity. We're going to get rid of the corruption in our money system first during the global currency reset before turning to the religious issues that she raised in her comment. And I said to Floor, I removed your comment on my YouTube channel, and Amazon Web Services closed down my access, but I succeeded in uploading a tweet on how the banking cartel tries to use religion to divide and conquer us, to keep us from dismantling the corrupt money system. I also uploaded the file on Internet Archive. And another point to make is that on August 31st, 2016, the Earth's healers noticed that energies are strong. This is when the global currency reset became manifest in reality. The latest YouTube segment, I began this series on the banking cartel after many years of trying to deal with the mainstream media. Working in the World Bank's legal department, where I fought the deepest corruption in the world's financial system for 21 years, was another way of preparing to represent all of the world's people as the overseer mandate trustee for the trust containing the world's monetary gold reserves and other wealth. I have a story to tell to each and every person on Earth. This is a big job. Luckily, I've been willing to learn on the job, and I've been ready to accept help. As you all have seen over the years, I'm not afraid to admit when I'm wrong, and I accept feedback. That's a polite way of saying that I'm just the opposite of shy. The alternative media contains about as much disinformation as the mainstream media. Somebody was asking about a gold audit. The crooks are unable to audit gold. I've already exposed that there's nothing but lies in connection with a gold audit. My record shows that I'm transparent and I've consistently preserved the world's assets in the global debt facility from countless attempts by agents of the banking cartel to steal them. Who would I be a gatekeeper for, when not a single embassy has questioned whether I speak on behalf of the world's peoples on matters involving the global debt facility? When I speak for the American people until the Constitution of 1789 goes back into effect via an Article 5 Constitutional Convention. When I'm cutting off the interest payments to the banking cartel and offsetting that scam called country debt, all the while decentralizing and turning corporate governments back to the people in their countries. And last but not least, preventing agents of the banking cartel from usurping United States military might. General Dunford is not going to succeed in surrendering the United States military unilaterally through a crash of the unconstitutional Federal Reserve note. Now, I've got 5 minutes. That's fantastic. Okay, what we're talking about here, what I'm hoping to do, is to figure out ways of getting consultations going. Let me talk about the question that was raised by this very wealthy person who had $2 trillion worth of Treaty of Versailles bonds. Let me explain what the Treaty of Versailles bonds are. In the 1930s, people went around to the very wealthy that had a lot of gold and said to them, "You're going to lose all your gold in the war." This was between World War I and World War II. People were very frightened that there was going to be World War II. And so the very wealthy said yes, they would be happy to sell their gold to the Federal Reserve in exchange for bonds that carried 4% interest that compounded. And most of these bonds, over $200 trillion worth of these bonds, are in the global debt facility. And they've been earning 4% interest, which compounds. It gets very large exponentially. And so the global debt facility, which is this trust that's at the World Bank, has over $2 quadrillion worth of debt owed by the banking cartel. And some wealthy individuals also got these bonds. They were not all given to the global debt facility. And these people, some of them are saying, I would like to join your efforts at fighting the banking cartel. I don't agree with the banking cartel. And you can have these bonds. And then the question for us is, if people give us these bonds and help us fight the banking cartel, are we going to compensate them some way? There are a lot of questions that we have to answer. We've said that there's a limit when you exchange currency of $1 million per person. You can only get gold. We're calling that the bills that contain the gold. We're calling them, that's going to be our currency. And we're saying that when you exchange Federal Reserve notes, you're limited to $1 million per person. And then we have to decide whether to raise that limit. And we haven't said anything about property, whether people that own property, if they sell it, can they sell it for the gold currency? Is there a limit on the amount of property? And then the question is, who's going to decide if there are limits? Are the same limits going to apply in each country? And if they don't apply in each country, people are likely, who own property, are likely to try to move. And then the question is going to be whether you can sell your property to people that don't live in the countries where the property is located? These are questions that are going to have to be answered in the global currency reset. We're the ones that are going to be answering these questions. And the issue is, how do we know what people want? We have to set up systems for polling people. And the point is also, you don't want to be asking people these questions until they understand what has been happening to them with the banking cartel, and that the information that they're getting in the media is all lies, all lies. And it's going to be a difficult process to bring these people on board with us. Winding down the banking cartel is not going to be a simple process, but we're going to accomplish this peacefully as we take our time to learn what we have to at each step along the way. That's what I've learned already. My reaching the Coalition for the Rule of Law, and don't forget 70% of the United States military, means that we are in the business of winding down the banking cartel.